The transport bay smelled of ion burn and old blood, the kind that never quite washed out no matter how many sterilization cycles the ship ran. The human prisoner was dragged across the polished black floor on his knees, maglock cuffs biting into his wrists with every jolt. He didn't resist. Not because he couldn't, but because he'd learned long ago that wasted movement was just another way to bleed faster. Around him, alien warriors watched with open disdain, tall, long-limbed figures clad in ceremonial armor that shimmered like liquid obsidian under the overhead lights. To them, this wasn't a capture. It was cleanup. Commander Sylvex stood apart from the rest, hands clasped behind her back, posture flawless. Her long, blade-shaped ears flicked once as the human was thrown at her feet. She didn't look down immediately. That alone was a message. Power didn't rush. Power waited. When she finally lowered her gaze, she saw a man who should have been broken already. His uniform was torn, his face smeared with dirt and dried blood, one eye swollen nearly shut. And yet, his breathing was steady, controlled, annoyingly so. This, one of the guards said, nudging the prisoner with the toe of his boot, is the human who resisted extraction on Draenos 4. Sylvex studied him now, properly. He was smaller than most of her warriors, built lean rather than strong, muscles shaped by endurance instead of brute force. His dark hair fell into his eyes, and he didn't bother to shake it away. Slowly, he lifted his head and met her gaze. Not with hatred, not with fear, with assessment. She felt it then, an unexpected flicker of irritation. "You may speak," she said coolly, already certain whatever came out of his mouth would be irrelevant. The human cleared his throat, testing it like someone checking a cracked instrument. "Is this the part where you give a speech?" he asked, voice rough but steady. "Or do we skip to the execution?" A ripple of amused hisses moved through the watching warriors. One laughed outright. Sylvex did not. Her golden eyes narrowed just a fraction. "You are in no position to be clever," she replied. He shrugged as much as the restraints allowed. "Been in worse positions." That earned a few more laughs. Sylvex raised a single finger, and the bay fell silent instantly. She stepped closer, boots clicking softly against the floor, until she stood directly in front of him. Up close, she could see the micro-tremors in his muscles, the signs of exhaustion he was trying very hard to hide. She could also see something else. Focus, the kind that didn't belong to someone waiting to die. "Your resistance cost my forces time and resources," she said. "By our law, that alone warrants termination." "Yeah," he said lightly. "Your law sounds very efficient." She leaned down slightly, bringing her face level with his. "You misunderstand," she said. "This is mercy. Most of your kind beg." For the first time, something flickered in his eyes. Not fear. Memory. Then it was gone. "I don't beg," he said. "I negotiate. Or I adapt." Sylvex straightened, unimpressed. Humans always talk too much. She turned away, already dismissing him in her mind, already categorizing him as another footnote in a campaign that would be remembered without his name. "Take him to holding," she ordered. "Prepare him for processing." As the guards hauled him to his feet, the human spoke again. "Commander," he said, almost casually. She paused, more out of annoyance than interest, and glanced back over her shoulder. "You took me lightly," he continued. "That might be your first mistake." The bay went quiet again. Sylvex studied him one last time, then turned away with a dismissive wave. Humans always said things like that, she thought. And humans always died. The holding chamber was designed to break things. Not physically, though it could do that too, but psychologically. The walls curved inward just enough to feel oppressive, the lighting a perpetual twilight that confused the sense of time, and the air carried a faint vibration tuned to unsettle most nervous systems. The guards threw the human inside and sealed the door without ceremony. He stumbled once, caught himself, then straightened slowly, testing his weight like a man checking whether his legs still belonged to him. When the locks engaged with a heavy final thud, he exhaled through his nose and muttered, "Cozy." The word echoed back at him, distorted and mocking. He paced the chamber, counting steps, mapping angles, noting the faint shimmer where energy fields overlapped. Old habit. You survived long enough and your mind stopped panicking and started inventorying. His cuffs deactivated with a sharp click moments later. Not mercy, but procedure. Prisoners were unbound before formal judgment. He flexed his wrists, wincing as blood rushed back in, and sat against the wall, head tipped back, eyes half closed. If this was going to be the end, he wanted to meet it awake. The door opened again sooner than expected. Commander Sylv X entered alone, her presence filling the chamber in a way the guards never could. She moved with unhurried precision, as if the space itself adjusted to accommodate her. In her hands, she carried no weapon, which was, to her people, the clearest sign of confidence. The door sealed behind her, leaving the two of them alone in the dim light. "You invoke the right," she said without preamble. The human opened one eye. "Did I?" "You spoke of negotiation," she replied. "By our law, a captive who believes themselves capable may demand single combat. Survival grants freedom. Failure grants death." He blinked, fully awake now, then let out a low whistle. "That's dramatic." "It is tradition," Sylvex said. "One you are unqualified to invoke." "Probably," he admitted. "But you didn't say I couldn't try." Her ears twitched, a small tell he was starting to recognize. "You misunderstand again," she said. "I allowed the request to stand because denying it would insult our customs. Not because I believe you have a chance." He pushed himself to his feet, slow and deliberate, and met her gaze squarely. "Then we're on the same page. I don't believe I have a chance either." That gave her pause. Just a fraction. "Then why demand it?" "Because dying on my feet beats being processed," he said simply. "And because you don't look like someone who respects people who go quietly." Sylvex studied him in silence. There it was again, that refusal to cower, to plead, to adopt the expected shape of a defeated thing. Humans were supposed to beg or rage. This one did neither. "You may choose your weapon," she said at last. "Within reason." He smiled faintly, a tired curve of the mouth. "No enhancements," he said. "No energy edge. Just metal." A ripple of disbelief crossed her expression. "You reject every advantage?" "I reject false ones," he replied. "If I'm going to lose, I want to know it's honest." Sylvex turned away, signaling the end of the exchange. "The duel will take place at first cycle," she said. "You will be returned here until then." As she reached the door, he spoke again, softer this time. "Commander." She stopped, but did not turn. "You win this," he said, "and you'll prove what everyone already believes about you. I survive, and you'll have to explain why." For a long moment, neither of them moved. Then the door opened, and Sylvex stepped out without a word. As it sealed behind her, the human sank back against the wall, closing his eyes. He had no illusion of victory. But survival, he knew, had a way of rewriting laws. The arena was silent in the way only places of ritualized violence ever were. Heavy, expectant, polished clean of everything but intent. A perfect circle of obsidian stone stretched beneath the artificial light, its surface etched with ancient sigils worn smooth by centuries of blood and honor. Tiered platforms rose around it, already filled with Cavani warriors standing shoulder to shoulder, their armor catching the light like frozen shadows. This was not entertainment. It was proof. Proof of dominance, of order, of who deserved to walk free and who did not. The human was escorted in through a narrow gate at the arena's edge. No chains this time. No restraints. Just two guards flanking him out of habit rather than necessity. He stepped onto the obsidian floor and felt the faint hum beneath his boots, the field that would absorb impact, prevent accidental death too early in the match. Accidental being the important word. He rolled his shoulders once, ignoring the way his body protested, and scanned the arena with a calm that felt borrowed. If he was afraid, he kept it locked behind his ribs where no one could see it. Across the circle, Commander Sylv X entered alone. The crowd straightened as one. Her ceremonial overcoat slid from her shoulders as she walked, falling away to reveal the skin-tight duelist armor beneath. Dark, seamless, designed for speed rather than protection. In her hand, her blade ignited with a soft, predatory hum, the monomolecular edge shimmering like contained starlight. She did not look at the human. Not yet. To acknowledge him too early would grant him significance he had not earned. A quartermaster approached the human and offered him a weapon. It was old, even by Cavanese standards, a ceremonial training blade, solid metal, no energy field, no enhancements. The kind used to teach form, not to win wars. He took it, testing the weight with a slow, thoughtful swing. A few warriors laughed quietly. Sylvex's ears flicked once, but she said nothing. The elder overseeing the duel stepped forward, his voice carrying effortlessly across the arena. By ancient law, he intoned, this duel shall be decided by surrender, incapacitation, or death. Begin. Sylvex moved. There was no warning, no dramatic pause. One moment she stood at the edge of the circle, the next she was in front of the human, her blade arcing toward his shoulder with lethal precision. It should have ended there. A clean strike. Efficient. Instead, the human twisted at the last possible second, the edge of her blade slicing empty air where he had been. The motion was clumsy, desperate, but effective. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Sylvex pressed the attack immediately, her movements fluid, relentless. Strike after strike rained down, each one faster than the last, forcing the human backward. He blocked where he could, parried when he had to, retreated when survival demanded it. His arms screamed with every impact, the shock rattling up through his bones, but he stayed upright, stayed moving. You are delaying the inevitable, Sylvex said coolly, reinforcing the statement with a heavy blow that sent him skidding across the obsidian floor. He barely managed to roll to his feet, breathing hard. Yeah, he said between breaths, I get that a lot. The crowd's amusement faded, replaced by something closer to interest. This was taking longer than expected. Sylvex felt it too, the faint, unwelcome shift in rhythm. The human was learning. Not matching her, not yet, but adjusting. Anticipating. She struck again, faster, sharper. The human ducked, stumbled, recovered. A shallow cut opened along his arm, blood dark against his skin. He didn't slow. For the first time since the duel began, Sylvex felt something unfamiliar tighten in her chest. Annoyance. He should have fallen by now. And he hadn't. The second exchange began without ceremony, but everything about it felt different. The human no longer retreated blindly. He watched. Between each strike, between each breath, his eyes tracked the minute shifts in Sylvex's stance, the angle of her shoulders before a high cut, the subtle tightening of her grip before a thrust. He was no longer reacting to her speed alone. He was reading her. That realization unsettled her far more than the shallow wound she had already given him. Sylvex adjusted, increasing her tempo, forcing the pace beyond what any unenhanced human should have been able to endure. Her blade sang through the air in blinding arcs, each strike designed to end the duel decisively. The human barely kept up, his training blade ringing against hers, his footwork uneven but purposeful. He stumbled once, nearly losing his balance, but recovered with a desperate pivot that brought him just out of reach. The crowd leaned forward now, attention sharpened. This was no longer a formality. It was becoming a contest. Pain bloomed across the human's ribs as a glancing strike slipped past his guard. He grunted, teeth clenched, but he didn't cry out. Instead, he shifted his stance, lowering his center of gravity, conserving movement. Survival over pride. That was his language. Sylvex recognized it with a flicker of irritation. Her people fought to dominate, to overwhelm, to demonstrate superiority. This human fought to last. Why do you persist? She demanded, voice edged now, as she drove him back toward the arena's boundary. He blocked another strike, arms trembling. Because stopping gets you killed, he said simply. Something about that answer lingered. Not dramatic, not defiant, just true. Sylvex feinted left, then struck low, a maneuver that had ended dozens of duels. The human reacted a fraction too late, then didn't. Instead of retreating, he stepped into the motion, letting the flat of her blade scrape past his thigh as he twisted. Pain flared white-hot, but his own sword snapped forward in the same instant, tapping the exposed edge of her forearm. It was nothing, barely contact, but it was a hit. The arena went dead silent. Sylvex froze, golden eyes flicking down to the spot where his blade had touched her armor. No damage, no blood, yet the meaning of it struck deeper than any wound. He had not just survived her strike. He had answered it. The human took 2 unsteady steps back, breathing hard, then looked up at her. A faint, exhausted grin pulled at his mouth. Guess I'm still here. A low murmur spread through the warriors, disbelief threading through it. Sylvex straightened slowly, her expression unreadable, but her ears betrayed her, twitching sharply. The duel had crossed a line she had not expected. This was no longer about humiliation. This human had proven something she had never considered possible. He was not winning, but he was not losing either. And for the first time since stepping into the arena, Sylvex felt the uncomfortable pressure of uncertainty settle into her bones. The rhythm of the duel shifted after that. Sylvex felt it immediately. The way the air itself seemed to tighten, the way the crowd's attention sharpened into something almost reverent. The human had landed a strike. Minor, meaningless in terms of damage, but devastating in implication. She had allowed herself to be touched. That alone was unacceptable. She advanced again, faster than before, her blade carving precise arcs meant not to test, but to end. The human barely held his ground. Each impact sent shockwaves through his arms, numbing his fingers, threatening to tear the sword from his grip. His breath came in ragged pulls now, sweat and blood blurring his vision, but his eyes stayed locked on her. Not on her weapon, on her. He had stopped thinking in terms of moves and counters. He was reading intent, predicting motion before it formed. It wasn't skill in the traditional sense. It was survival instinct honed by years of impossible odds. "You fight without honor," Sylvex said, her voice cutting through the clash of blades. He parried a downward strike, staggered under the force. "Honor doesn't keep you alive," he replied. "Breathing does." Her ears flicked sharply. The answer struck closer than she cared to admit. Her people glorified victory, recorded it, built monuments to it. But they rarely spoke of survival unless it came packaged with triumph. This human carried survival like a scar, worn openly, without shame. It was infuriating. Sylvex changed tactics. Instead of overwhelming speed, she applied pressure, measured, relentless, forcing him to spend energy defending, her strikes herding him into narrower movement. She was dissecting him now, testing endurance, waiting for the inevitable collapse. The human felt it immediately. His legs burned. His injured side screamed with every twist. He was running out of time. And yet, when the opening came, he took it. Sylvex lunged, committing just a fraction too much weight to a thrust meant to finish the duel. The human slipped inside her guard again, ignoring the pain as her blade scraped his shoulder. His training sword snapped up, striking her thigh with a sharp crack. Not a disabling blow, but unmistakable. The arena erupted. 2 hits. Sylvex recoiled, more in shock than pain, retreating a single step. That step might as well have been a chasm. The crowd had never seen her yield ground. Not once. She stared at him now, truly seeing him for the first time. Not as a captive, not as a human, but as a fighter who refused to disappear. The human exhaled shakily, barely keeping his footing. "I don't need to beat you," he said hoarsely. "I just need to not stop." Sylvex raised her blade again, but her expression had changed. The certainty was gone. In its place was something sharper, heavier. Recognition. This duel was no longer about victory. It was about which philosophy would break first. Sylvex circled him now, slower than before, her movements deliberate, predatory. The roar of the crowd faded into a low, distant hum, like static at the edge of perception. She was thinking. That alone marked a dangerous shift. The human felt it instinctively, the pause before a storm, the recalibration of a superior predator. His hands shook around the hilt of his sword, fingers numb, arms heavy as stone. Every breath burned. Every heartbeat reminded him how close he was to the edge of his limits. But he stayed upright. He always stayed upright. "You endure," Sylvex said at last, her voice quieter, stripped of ceremony. "Most break long before this." He swallowed, eyes never leaving her. "Yeah," he rasped. "I don't break fast." She attacked again, but the style was different now. Gone were the elegant, predictable sequences. Her strikes came from odd angles, broken rhythms, deliberate disruptions meant to shatter his timing. She was adapting to him the way he had adapted to her. The first blow slipped past his guard and slammed into his side, driving the air from his lungs in a strangled gasp. He staggered, barely catching himself before falling. Pain exploded through his ribs, bright and sharp, threatening to overwhelm his focus. Sylvex did not press the advantage immediately. That hesitation was brief, almost imperceptible, but the human felt it. He used it. He shifted his stance, lowering himself, redistributing his weight to compensate for the damage. Survival again. Always survival. When she came at him this time, he met her blade head-on, steel ringing against plasma-hardened edge, sparks scattering across the obsidian floor. "You could surrender," she said as she forced him backward. "No shame would follow. You have already exceeded expectation." He laughed once, breathless and raw. "That's the problem," he said. "I don't know how." Her next strike clipped his shoulder, tearing fabric, drawing blood. His arm nearly failed him. He dropped to one knee, the world tilting violently. The crowd surged, sensing the end. Sylvex raised her blade high, poised for the final blow. And then she saw his eyes. Not fear, not desperation, just stubborn refusal. Something twisted in her chest. Not pity, not mercy. Recognition again, stronger now, heavier. This human had never believed he would win. That had never been his goal. He fought because stopping meant erasure. Because surrender, to him, was simply another word for death. Sylvex lowered her blade a fraction. The human looked up at her, chest heaving, blood dripping onto the obsidian beneath him. "You still thinking about killing me?" he asked hoarsely. "Or are you trying to figure out why I'm still breathing?" The words landed harder than any strike. Sylvex stepped back slowly, creating space between them. The crowd's noise faltered, confusion rippling outward. This was not how duels progressed. This was not how they ended. She straightened, her posture rigid, her blade still humming in her hand, but no longer aimed at him. "You fight," she said carefully, "as though the universe has already tried to erase you." He nodded once, exhausted. More than once. Sylvex deactivated her blade. The hum vanished, leaving a silence so absolute it felt fragile. Gasps echoed from the stands. Warriors shifted uneasily. Laws trembled. "This duel," she said, voice carrying across the arena, "has ceased to serve its purpose." The human blinked, disbelief cutting through his fatigue. "Does that mean I'm dead?" he asked, "or something worse?" For the first time since he had met her, Sylvex allowed herself a faint, almost imperceptible smile. "It means," she said, "that you have forced me to reconsider what strength looks like." She turned from him then, facing the assembled warriors, her voice hardening once more, not with dominance, but with decision. "The duel is suspended." And in that moment, the human understood something profound. He hadn't defeated her, but he had changed her. And that, somehow, felt more dangerous than victory. The silence that followed Sylvex's declaration was not peaceful. It was fractured, unstable, filled with the kind of tension that came when centuries of certainty were suddenly questioned. Warriors shifted in their places, armor whispering as they exchanged uneasy glances. The elders overseeing the arena leaned toward one another, their expressions tight, calculating. Duels did not end this way. They ended with blood, surrender, or death. Anything else was an anomaly, and anomalies were dangerous. The human remained on one knee, breathing hard, the weight of exhaustion finally pressing down now that the blade was no longer aimed at his throat. He didn't move, didn't speak. He had learned the hard way that moments like this were fragile. Say the wrong thing, move too fast, and the universe corrected itself violently. His sword slipped from his fingers and clattered softly against the obsidian floor. He made no effort to retrieve it. Sylvex turned back to him slowly. Without her blade humming, without the forward lean of imminent violence, she seemed different. Not smaller, just exposed. "Stand," she said. He hesitated, then pushed himself up, legs trembling beneath him. Pain flared in protest, but he forced himself upright, locking his knees, meeting her gaze again. Up close, he could see the conflict in her eyes now. The war between doctrine and observation, between what she had been taught and what she had just witnessed. "You were captured," she said, voice steady but low. "Because my people believe dominance defines worth." He nodded faintly. "A lot of people believe that." "You were allowed to challenge me," she continued, "because our laws value strength demonstrated through victory." Her ears twitched, betraying tension. "But you did not seek victory." "No," he said, "just space to keep existing." The admission hung between them, stark and unadorned. A murmur spread through the stands again, quieter this time, uncertain. Sylvex turned toward the elders, her posture straightening, authority settling back over her like armor. "By our law," she said, "a duel may be ended by the presiding commander if its outcome no longer aligns with its purpose." One of the elders stepped forward, clearly unsettled. "Commander," he said carefully, The prisoner has not surrendered. Nor has he won. Sylvex inclined her head slightly. Correct. Then he remains a prisoner. She turned her gaze back to the human, studying him one last time. He stood there bleeding, exhausted, barely holding himself together, and yet, unmistakably unbroken. When she spoke again, her voice carried across the arena, reaffirming itself not as challenge, but as judgment. He is no longer a prisoner. The reaction was immediate. Gasps, shouts, protest. Shock rippled through the ranks like a physical force. The human himself stared at her, momentarily forgetting how to breathe. Wait, he said hoarsely. That's not how this was supposed to go. Sylvex met his gaze evenly. No, she replied. It is how it must. She turned back to the assembled warriors, her voice sharp now, command absolute. This human fought without illusion, without entitlement, without belief in superiority. He fought to survive. That alone has proven his worth. The elders bristled, but none directly challenged her. Authority, once asserted, carried weight. Slowly, unwillingly, the arena began to settle. Sylvex faced the human again, lowering her voice. Your freedom is granted, she said. What you do with it is now your responsibility. He let out a shaky breath that turned into a rough laugh. That might be the scariest part so far. For the first time, Sylvex did not reprimand him for humor. Instead, she studied him with something approaching respect. You will be escorted from the arena, she said. Not as a captive. As guards moved forward, this time keeping their distance, the human glanced back at her once more. You know, he said quietly. They're going to hate you for this. Her ears flicked. They already do, she replied. Today, I simply gave them a reason. As he was led away, the arena slowly emptied, buzzing with questions that had no easy answers. Sylvex remained standing at the center of the obsidian circle, alone now, staring at the faint stains of blood on the floor. She had not lost the duel, but something old had cracked, and she was no longer sure she wanted it repaired. Freedom turned out to be far less clean than the word implied. The human was escorted not to an exit, but to a quiet medical chamber buried deep within the warship's interior. No restraints this time, no weapons leveled at his back, yet the sense of danger lingered all the same. He sat on the edge of the examination platform while an automated unit sealed his wounds with efficient, impersonal precision. The pain dulled to a manageable throb, but his mind refused to settle. Freedom, he was learning, came with expectations and consequences. Sylvex arrived after the med unit finished and withdrew, leaving them alone once more. She stood near the doorway for a moment, arms crossed, studying him with a gaze no longer sharpened by immediate violence. You should not still be alive, she said plainly. He huffed a weak laugh. Story of my life. She ignored the comment, stepping closer. By our traditions, your survival places me under scrutiny. Some will say I broke the law. Others will say I bent it too far. And you? He asked. She considered the question longer than she liked. I say the law failed to account for you. That earned a faint, tired smile from him. I get that a lot. Sylvex's ears twitched, but she did not correct him. Instead, she activated a wall display, projecting tactical logs from the duel, slowed, dissected, analyzed. She gestured toward the data. You adjusted after every strike, she said. Your body degraded, yet your efficiency increased. This is not standard human combat doctrine. No, he agreed. It's just practice. Practice for what? He met her gaze steadily. Not dying. The answer sat heavy in the room. Sylvex turned away, pacing slowly. My people are taught that strength proves worth, she said. That those who fall deserve to fall. You challenge that assumption simply by continuing to exist. Wasn't trying to make a statement, he said quietly. Just trying to stay. She stopped pacing, looking at him again, really looking. Not as a curiosity, not as a problem, but as a variable she had failed to predict. You are free, she said again, as if testing the word. Yet you remain on my ship. Didn't see a shuttle lined up, he replied. A pause. Then, unexpectedly, she inclined her head slightly. Not a bow. An acknowledgement. You may remain here until you recover, she said. As a guest. His eyebrows rose. That's a dangerous offer. Everything about you is dangerous, she replied calmly. You introduced doubt. He leaned back slightly, wincing as his injuries protested. You don't seem like someone who enjoys doubt. I don't, she admitted. but I respect what survives it. Outside the chamber, the warship continued on its course, engines humming with relentless purpose. Inside, something far quieter was happening. No declarations, no alliances, just two warriors from opposite sides of a brutal history, sitting with the uncomfortable knowledge that the universe had shifted beneath their feet. Neither of them said it aloud, but they both understood the truth. The duel had ended. The consequences had not. The warship changed its behavior toward him in small, almost imperceptible ways. Corridors that once felt hostile now felt watchful. Warriors who passed him no longer spat insults or averted their eyes. Instead, they studied him with open curiosity, measuring him against the stories already forming. The human noticed it all and trusted none of it. He walked carefully, shoulders still tight, senses tuned to the subtle shifts that preceded violence. Freedom on a warship, he was learning, was a temporary condition. Sylvex faced resistance almost immediately. Reports flooded her console. Formal objections from elders, murmured dissent among captains, questions framed as protocol but sharpened by disapproval. She read them in silence, dismissing some, flagging others, never allowing her expression to change. Authority could weather many things, but doubt from within was corrosive. And yet, when she reviewed the duel footage again, she felt no regret, only clarity. They spoke that night in the observation chamber, a wide arc of transparent alloy opening onto the star-drenched void. The human stood near the barrier, arms folded loosely, watching distant constellations smear into light as the ship traveled faster than reason allowed. "You ever notice," he said quietly, "how space doesn't care who wins?" Sylvex regarded him from across the room. "Victory determines survival," she said. "Sometimes," he replied. "Sometimes it just determines who gets remembered." She considered that, ears flicking slowly. "You speak as though memory is more important than power." "I think," he said, choosing his words carefully, "that power without memory keeps making the same mistakes." That answer followed her into silence. Outside, stars burned indifferent and ancient, witnesses to conflicts that had risen and fallen long before either of their species learned to name them. "You will be watched," Sylvex said at last. "Some will test you. Others will test me through you." He nodded. "I figured. You could leave at the next outpost," she continued. "No one would stop you." He turned to look at her then, surprised. "You're offering me a way out?" "I am offering you a choice," she corrected. He studied her for a long moment, then shook his head slowly. "Not yet." Her brow arched slightly. "Why?" "Because running away after surviving something like that feels unfinished," he said. "And because," he added after a pause, "if your people are going to question you, I don't want to be the reason you stand alone." The admission caught her off guard. Not because of loyalty, she did not believe in that so easily, but because of intent. He had nothing to gain from staying. No leverage. No reward. Just presence. Sylvex stepped closer to the viewport, standing beside him. For a moment, neither spoke. Two silhouettes against the endless dark. "You have altered the course of this ship," she said quietly. He let out a breath. "Wasn't my plan." She glanced at him, something unreadable passing through her eyes. Intent does not lessen impact. Outside the observation chamber, the warship pressed onward, carrying not just weapons and warriors, but the fragile beginnings of an idea neither empire was ready to face. Strength had many forms, and one of them had just walked aboard and refused to leave. The warship no longer felt the same to him, and that was somehow worse than open hostility. Warriors watched him now with narrowed eyes and careful distance, their respect uneasy, their fear unspoken. Whispers followed him through corridors, not of weakness, but of disruption. The human who had survived. The human who had forced the commander to stop. He felt it in the subtle pauses when he entered a room, the way conversation stalled just long enough to remind him that freedom aboard an enemy vessel was a fragile illusion. He did not relax. He had learned that survival often depended on noticing what others pretended was normal. Sylvex, meanwhile, found her authority tested in ways no battlefield had ever prepared her for. Objections came wrapped in courtesy and tradition, dissent disguised as concern for order. Elders questioned precedent. Captains requested clarification. The word anomaly appeared more than once in official logs. She answered them all with measured restraint, refusing to justify what she did not regret. Yet in the quiet moments between commands, she replayed the duel, not for strategy, but for understanding. The human's refusal to surrender echoed louder than any challenge she had ever faced. They spoke again beneath the observation dome, where the stars stretched into silent rivers beyond the hull. He stood with his arms folded, gaze distant, as if the void made more sense than the warship around them. Funny thing about space, he said softly. It doesn't care who wins. Victory determines survival, Sylvex replied automatically. Sometimes, he said. Sometimes it just decides who gets written into history. The words lingered longer than she expected. Her people worshipped victory. They carved it into stone and song. But history, she realized, was written by those who lasted long enough to tell it. You are aware you will be tested, she said at last. Through challenge. Through provocation. Through me. He nodded once. I know. You may leave at the next outpost, she added. No pursuit. No claim. That made him turn. Surprise crossed his face, followed by something steadier. Not yet, he said. Why stay? Because walking away after surviving something like that feels unfinished, he answered. And because if they're going to question you for this choice, I won't be the reason you face it alone. Sylvex studied him in silence, the weight of that decision settling between them. He owed her nothing. She owed him nothing. And yet, here they stood, two warriors bound not by law or conquest, but by the uncomfortable truth that something had shifted. Outside the dome, the stars burned on, indifferent and eternal. Inside, the warship carried something far more dangerous than a human survivor. It carried doubt. And doubt, Sylvex realized, was the first step toward change. The summons came at first cycle, delivered with all the cold formality the Cavaney High Council favored when they intended to remind someone of their place. Sylvex stood at the center of the command chamber as the elders' holographic forms resolved around her, their towering projections framed by symbols of conquest and ancestral law. The human was not present, and that was intentional. This judgment was not about him alone. It was about what she had allowed to exist. You disrupted tradition, one elder said, voice layered and resonant. You elevated a captive above doctrine, said another. You introduced uncertainty, a third concluded, as if it were the gravest charge of all. Sylvex did not bow. She did not apologize. I observed strength, she said evenly. Not the kind that wins quickly, but the kind that endures when victory is impossible. That is not our way, an elder snapped. Then our way is incomplete, Sylvex replied. The chamber fell silent. No one challenged her authority outright, but the fracture was visible now. Hairline, dangerous, irreversible. At last, the council rendered its decision. The human would not be reclassified as property. He would not be executed. He would be recorded as an independent entity under Sylvex's responsibility. A compromise, wrapped in warning. When the projection faded, Sylvex exhaled slowly and turned away. Outside the chamber, the human waited, leaning against the bulkhead with the casual posture of someone pretending not to care. Let me guess, he said. I'm either dead, enslaved, or promoted. She regarded him for a long moment. You are none of those things, she said. You are my burden. He smiled faintly. Been worse. She gestured toward the observation deck, and together they walked in silence, the warship humming steadily around them. Through the transparent alloy, the stars stretched endlessly. No borders, no empires, no laws, just distance and possibility. You should have broken, Sylvex said quietly. By every measure we respect, you should not exist as you do. Yeah, he said. People keep telling me that. She turned to face him then, her expression no longer that of a commander addressing a variable, but of a warrior acknowledging another. You did not defeat me, she said, but you forced me to see beyond victory. He met her gaze, steady despite everything. Then maybe that's enough. For a long moment, neither spoke. The war was still real. The galaxy was still dangerous. Consequences waited patiently beyond the next jump. But something fundamental had changed, not in treaties or fleets, but in understanding. You are free, Sylvex said at last. Not because you won, but because you endured. He let out a slow breath, as if only now allowing himself to believe it. Guess that makes this the part where we figure out what comes next. Sylvex looked back to the stars, a rare, thoughtful stillness settling over her. "No," she said. "That is the part where we begin." And as the warship altered its course, just slightly, almost imperceptibly, the universe did not notice. But one day it would.